Hi, welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I save 20% of my income in the form of coins and precious metals. Today we're going to be doing a segment that I'm calling $50 Friday. Every Friday, I'm going to be looking at the current spot price and finding out how much silver it will take to value $50. Last week, we came up with 1.3 ounces of pure silver and $1.80 in 90% silver. So let's go ahead and do that silver math. Pull up a cup of coffee and let's get comfortable. So before we go ahead and get into the silver math, I'm going to let you know when I think this would be most appropriate to use. When I more often use this is when I'm figuring out how much silver I can afford during my dollar cost average. If my dollar cost average was $50, how much silver could I realistically expect to get at the coin shop? Well, we're going to look at the two examples of getting pure silver or 90% silver. And you have to remember that when you go to buy silver, you are going to be paying a premium. So if you look at this 1.3 ounces, that's going to be your goal. That's the spot value. So you want to buy silver that is the lowest premium. You want to get to as close to this 1.3 ounces of silver as possible. So let's go ahead and perform this math and we'll find out really how simple it is. So you're going to start with the amount that you're trying to make. In this case, $50. If your dollar cost average is $100, $200, or $500, obviously we're going to start there. Today it's $50. So we're going to take that and simply just divide it by the spot price of today. Today's spot price is $38.11. So we're going to end up with something like this. We take our $50, we divide 38.11, and we're going to end up with 1.31 ounces. Now, we can't get exactly 1.31 ounces unless we try to buy grams or smaller fractional sizes. For today, we're just going to round it down to 1.3 ounces of silver. The next thing we're going to do is figure out the face value of this silver. So a lot of people say that junk silver or 90% silver takes $1.40 to accumulate 1 ounce. And that's really the closest we can get. But what's more accurate is $1.38. And yes, the $1.40 does account for some wear, but more often than not, coins are not worn to that extent. So we're actually just going to multiply that number to this 1.3, and that is how we get 1.81, so $1.81. And real quick, I'll show you how the units kind of line up. So we took our $50 and we divided it by spot price. That spot price is expressed in dollars per ounce. So this is what that actually looks like. As we divide fractions, we're going to be multiplying in reality. So that's where the dollars cross each other out, and we end up in ounces. From there, we're multiplying a face value per ounce, and in here, simple fractions, the ounces will cross each other out, and we end up in a face value. Really what we're doing is starting with the dollar amount and ending in an amount of silver expressed in ounces versus an amount of silver expressed in face value. So as you can see, it is actually the same amount of silver as last week. But real quick, I'm going to go into how we can get even closer to the actual 1.31 ounces. This is what the silver math can tell us. If we play around with our known figure of $1.38 per ounce, we can find out that one dime contains 0.072 ounces of silver. And again, since people account for more wear than is typical, industry standard is actually this 0.071. It continues from there. I believe 715 is what most people use. But what that's going to give us is that 3 dimes is actually equivalent to 0.214 ounces. So why is that significant? Well, if we took our pure silver, this is 1 ounce, and we kept one tenth of an ounce, and then used these 3 dimes, this will give us near the exact amount of silver that is $50. This 1.1 ounces of pure silver and 30 cents of face value is as close as we're actually going to be able to get to that 1.31 ounces that is $50 today. So as you can see, last week we had the same numbers, 1.31 ounces and and $1.80 in face value. And the reason that that is, even though the spot value has changed, last week when we had this conversation, it was $37.75. The spot value has changed, but not even enough to make a difference in the physical silver because there is that rounding issue. When we combine the two, we're able to get significantly closer to the actual amount. But what I want to do is push the point to show how different these two actually are. Because we have these larger coins here and a few smaller coins, it's easy to think that these are actually quite close. So in order to push that point, I have these values expressed in just tenth of an ounce of silver and dimes. And this is what I'm going to start to carry this week. So let's go ahead and move these big chunky coins out of the way. And we're going to add these tenth of an ounces of silver. And we'll move these chunky coins away and add these dimes. Well, now it just seems like two piles of coins. But when we actually go to count these, and it's already very obvious that's going to be 13 coins versus 18 coins. But when we see it laid out, it makes it even more obvious. So as you can see, this $50 expressed in pure silver versus the $50 expressed in 90% silver make a pretty big difference. And when that difference starts to really accumulate is if you were to get into owning hundreds or thousands of dollars of silver. If you did all of that in pure silver versus 90% silver, your stack would be very different in size. And there are some people that don't collect the 90% silver because they are in silver to that big of an extent to where they no longer have space for this amount of silver. They only have pure silver. If space is really that much of an issue for you, it's time to start looking at gold. Even this tiny little 1 gram bar has a melt value of $107. That is a little bit more than all of these coins combined. That and the fact that the gold to silver ratio is on a downward trend at the moment is why I am trading 5 ounces of silver into gold in the current moment. I take 5 ounces of silver and my biweekly dollar cost average to purchase gold. And if you're interested in finding out the results of that, tune in tomorrow because I'll be making a trade tonight. Thank you for joining our Coffee and Coins conversation. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button. Send this video out to those that might be looking into purchasing silver, or maybe you and some friends already enjoy sending silver content to each other. Make sure you share the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and most of all, thank you for watching.